Hello, dreamers! It's Maya Joy once again, and I'm so happy to be joining you all today to talk about a planet that I love so much, which is, of course, the planet Mercury, my planetary ruler. And I would like to welcome you all to my Mercury Retrograde series and Mercury series, which I'm going to be putting out here over about the next month or so. The first video in this series today is going to be about Mercury Retrograde and the larger reason why we experience these Mercury retrograde periods and sort of what is actually taking place for us when Mercury is retrograde and why it really is important for the overall Mercury cycle. So in today's video, I want to take a moment and just talk a little bit about what is Mercury. I think the general teachings on Mercury don't really give us the best idea of the core essence of the planet's magic. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is Mercury? What does it feel like in terms of our human experience when Mercury is moving at its proper speed or moving at a quick speed and it's unobstructed? What sorts of events tend to happen for us? And conversely, when Mercury has slowed down, which it is now, or it's obstructed by heavy or slow planets like Saturn or other planets, then what tends to happen and why? I'm also going to talk about the Mercury retrograde cycles in terms of how often they come around and how to kind of follow them in your chart. And then we're going to have a couple examples of real life experiences that are really tangible and practical that I had during the past two Mercury retrograde cycles. So as I am recording this, Mercury is about to go retrograde. It's about to station retrograde. By the time the video comes out, it will be right on the precipice of Mercury retrograde, which will begin on June 10th or June 11th, depending on where you are in the world of 2022. This Mercury retrograde will be happening in the sign of Gemini at first and at the end of the retrograde, and it will also be happening in the sign of Taurus. So if you know your chart, it's an excellent idea to pull it out now and see which houses in your chart are ruled by the sign of Gemini and the sign of Taurus. Because these are the areas of your life and your chart that are going to be being upgraded during this Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde is really a time of slowing down to sort out any sort of weak points in a particular area of our life so that when it starts moving quickly again, we are able to just have everything going, everything flowing, all the kinks are worked out, all the problems are worked out, and we can just make the most of the Mercury magic. So what am I talking about when I say Mercury magic? Well, Mercury is actually the planet in astrology that has the most significations, and it is the only planet in astrology which in ancient teachings was not gendered. So there's a lot that kind of falls under Mercury's scope. But basically when we think of Mercury, we're thinking of communication, the conveying of information, the media. We are thinking about commerce, exchange, business. Mercury often is linked to the mind. Someone who has a very strong Mercury in their chart is going to tend to be able to think very, very quickly. They're going to be able to convey their ideas. They're going to be able to capture attention. So Mercury is what allows our mind to make really wonderful connections. I think of it as like a brain that's kind of all lit up and is able to easily assimilate new ideas and knows the right questions to ask, and is, a Mercury person is that person who can sit down and they can talk to anyone and create an engaging conversation. So Mercury is our way of thinking. It's our way of speaking, but it's not just the output. It's not like Mercury is not just the output. It's not, oh, I wrote this or, oh, I said this. It's also the inner workings of the mind. So it's Mercury rules how we understand. You know how some days maybe you get a great sleep and you just wake up and you're just sharp and it's like, yeah, like I can take on the world. And it's like, oh yeah, today I'm going to start learning Japanese or something like that. It's like, oh, my mind is like working great. That's when Mercury is also working great. So Mercury is our words, it's our ideas, it's learning, but it's not just the act of learning, it's the spirit of learning. You know, it's the curiosity itself, it's our assimilation of new ideas, and I think the enthusiasm with which we approach our education. Mercury people tend to be teachers, they tend to be writers, they tend to be media professionals. These days, they could be even influencers, you know, or YouTube creators, but they're also bankers. They're also business people. I mean, business is a trade of communication as much as anything else. You have to be able to convince people that what you're selling is worthwhile, and it's all about those little exchanges. And that's what Mercury really is. It's like these brief exchanges that move like very, very quickly. If you want to talk about, you know, enlightening someone or creating like a full book or a full teaching series, that's more Jupiter. But Mercury is like, you know, now Mercury is so many things and I love this planet, so I don't want to cheapen it. But you know how like if you go to like a Whole Foods or something like that and there's like those people and they have like samples of the newest healthy cookie or whatever the case may be in like the little plastic cups, and you're just kind of going about your shopping and you're going down the aisle. Maybe you're going to buy some peanut butter or something like that, and they're like, hey, over here, you want this cookie, you want this cookie, and the next thing you know, not only are you eating the cookie, which wasn't really a part of your plan, but you're also buying 10 boxes of the cookie. That's Mercury. It's like, oh, this captured my attention. Oh my gosh, let me check it out. Oh yeah, that is interesting. Okay, I'm going to buy it. Like, okay. And now the next thing you know, you're off. So Mercury is the quick communications. I do have a lot of Mercury in my chart. Like, not only is it my chart ruler, but it's conjunct my sun. It's the ruler of my midheaven and the ruler of my south node for people that speak like astrologies. So if you're trying to understand Mercury, I think that I do capture like a decent amount of the Mercury essence. But yeah, the other thing that Mercury is like really known for, because it is like it's impulse in the higher way. You know how some people can be impulsive and it's like really destructive, but I think of it more as like flow, like the information flow or synchronicity or when you're in flow. So Mercury rules short distance travels. It's like, oh, you know, I really wanted to go to that museum. Oh, you know what? I've got 2.5 hours. Like, traffic's not bad. Like, let's go now and discover like whatever it is, the ancient Egypt exhibit or whatever else. It's like that. It's the travels that are within like our general scope where you can kind of, I would say in ancient times, it would have been just kind of, you know, like your neighborhood or whatever when you couldn't travel. But now it's probably like travel that would be within, say, like an hour and a half of where you live. So it's short distance travel. And it's the information flow and the traffic flow, as you all know, from Mercury retrograde, like construction and delays and accidents. It definitely rules the traffic flow. And it rules not only the information itself and the communication, but it rules the tools that help us to convey our communication and information, which we also all know because during not just Mercury retrogrades, I mean, Mercury retrogrades have a bad rap, but not just Mercury retrograde, but during any like malefic Mercury transit, even brief transits of the moon, our tools for conveying information often just shut down or they just, like they can just shut down or they go all crazy, they go all wonky. And I'm going to have another video coming out about that. But the one thing that I want to say so that everyone knows is do not throw your technologies away during Mercury retrograde or go out and buy new ones. If you do go out and buy new ones, that is okay. Some people say, oh, don't buy anything. Just usually at places like electronic places like the Apple Store or Best Buy or stuff like that, they usually give you like a 30-day money back guarantee, which is perfect because Mercury retrogrades are only, they're less than 30 days. So you're good. Just keep the receipt. But usually issues that happen during Mercury retrograde with our technologies, they actually resolve themselves in most cases when Mercury goes direct. Okay, so don't panic and have a sense of humor. Okay, yes. Okay, but that's going to be a different video. Okay, so I'm going to provide 2 examples of what might happen to you when Mercury is in positive aspect and at full speed versus during a retrograde period. Okay, so when I think of just an excellent Mercury day, I think of something like this. So maybe you've been wanting to get some AirPods and it's in your heart. It's like, dang, I would really like those AirPods. And you're kind of, sometimes you just think about like, oh yeah, I'm going to be able to hear this music so much better, like with these AirPods, and you have all these visions and stuff like that. And it's a great Mercury day. Maybe Mercury is conjunct the ascendant and it's Gemini season and it's just wonderful Mercury. Yes. Okay. So you go on Amazon or you go on apple.com and it's like, oh my gosh, they're running one of those flash sales. Like right now, Apple AirPods are 55% off. Like buy them now and they're available like in all of the colors. And you just like are like, oh my gosh, that's the one I've been visiting. And you add it to your cart and you check out and it's like, hey, today only free 2-hour delivery. And, maybe you sit down and you have lunch and you watch a Netflix show and halfway through you get a knock on your door. The AirPods are here. You put them in your ears, they work perfectly, and it is the ultimate like culmination of your dream. And it's like you didn't even have time to think about what could have went wrong because everything went right. Mercury Juju was blessing you on that day. Okay, so that's what it feels like. We've all had experiences like that, hopefully. I hope you have. Like, I definitely have. Like, when Mercury is going very quickly through the sky and is unobstructed. Okay, but when our planet Mercury is experiencing a different experience, it's not necessarily a worse experience. It's just we have to adapt ourselves and adapt to the energies of the moment to match Mercury if we want to have harmony with life. So like when Mercury begins to slow down or begins to retrograde as it is now, this is the type of situation that we would get instead. So same situation where you've been dreaming about the AirPods and it's, you've just been thinking, oh, it's going to be so great when I finally have those. And you go online and you see a flash deal and there's this picture of AirPods and you're like, you know what? Like, I deserve this. Like, I want these. Like, I'm gonna buy these. And there's like kind of like all of this like fine print, but that's normal. Like there is usually, right? Like when you purchase something on, online, like often there's a lot of fine print. So you just click accept and you add it to your cart and you check out. But you didn't review the fine details and you wait and you're like, dang, like you finally say 7 days later, you finally use the tracking number to track the AirPods and you see something a little bit unusual. The AirPods are coming from China and it's going to take 3 more weeks for them to get to your house. In the meantime, you see that, a lot of your local stores, maybe the Apple Store or Target, they're actually putting their AirPods on sale. And you start to feel like, I should have just bought them here because I really need them right now. And it's still going to be maybe 2 more weeks or 10 more days. Well, finally, when the package arrives at your house, you waited maybe 3.5 weeks. It's a little bit tattered. There's strange tape all around it. It has a lot of different labels on it. And you open the package and to your dismay, the AirPods are fake. Instead of having an apple, you see a pear. And when you put them in your ear and you test them out, there's terrible frequencies that play. They sound like crap. And when you try to contact the seller, they say, sorry, you agreed to our fine print. To make matters worse, you check your bank statement and see that your card information has been compromised, and you have $5,000 of unexpected charges. Well, with some fortitude, you're able to sort it out, but it takes 2 months to get refunds. And at that time, you still don't have the AirPods that you desired. So that's the type of situation that can occur if we try to approach life as if Mercury is working and flowing smoothly when it is not. And I just want to say to people, it's not your fault. It's not your fault when this happens, but it is important to feel into the energies and to be aware. Like, if you're already on the astrological journey, it's beneficial to be aware of Mercury retrogrades. Probably the only thing that would probably be like more auspicious to learn about for the harmony and flow of your life would probably be the moon. Like, to know where the moon is at any given time, but otherwise it's Mercury. Okay. And it's, we all want to just like move at full speed all the time, and we want everything to flow in life, but that's actually it's not actually like in our highest good. Because the reason why is that things change. Information changes, commerce changes, and the purpose of the Mercury retrograde is to show us where things have changed and we need to update our understanding. It's basically to show us where there are weak points in our own personal conception of a particular area of our life or chart where problems could arise. During a Mercury retrograde, the problems, typically it's one major challenge. I shouldn't use the word problem, but that will arise, like in the area of your chart where the Mercury retrograde begins. What's good though is that when Mercury is retrograde, imagine if it moved retrograde and like it was also moving very quickly. That would be a disaster because problems would arise and they'd be out of our control. But it actually goes really, really slowly, giving us enough time to receive the challenge and reflect and then find a new way forward. You know that you're not making the best of a Mercury retrograde if Mercury retrograde gives you a problem and you get really frustrated and mad and you just wait for Mercury to end, like the Mercury retrograde period to end, and then you go back to doing the exact same thing. That's where possibly the Mercury retrograde did not achieve like its stated purpose. So like if you were in that situation with the AirPods, right? The lesson would be probably for you a couple of things. So one would be definitely read the fine print. And although that's frustrating, like in that moment, if something like that has happened to you, imagine how much money and time that you would actually save if you really integrated that understanding for the rest of your life. Because like it might, it might be frustrating with your AirPods, but it'd be 10 times more frustrating if you don't read the fine print when you're buying a car or you're buying a house or like something like that. So ultimately, like Mercury is our teacher and it is teaching us like through these experiences. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about the Mercury cycle and then share 2 real examples from the previous 2 Mercury retrogrades that happened at the end of last year and then earlier this year in my life. So Mercury itself moves through every area of your chart in about a year's time, if you take into account the retrograde cycles. So this means that we have a chance to think, reflect, engage with each area of our life. Like we kind of visit these areas in about 1 year's time. So let me provide a little bit more of an example. So for example, Mercury could spend anywhere from about 14 to 30 days in your first house every year. So this is the time where first house is the house of I am. It's our physical body. It's how we present ourselves to the world. So like when Mercury is there, it's like, what was I thinking? Like, I need to update my profile picture. Like, this is how people see me. This is like, and oh my gosh, like, I think I need to change the font, like on my resume, like, and we just suddenly find ourselves like really inspired around those ideas. Maybe it's like, hey, like I haven't been like using my middle name like at all, or my middle initial, but I looked at the numerology and it's actually better. So instead of calling myself, Maria Jose, like I'm going to now call myself Maria Luisa Jose, like, cause that's better. Like, and then we start to just have these realizations like about ourselves. And then like afterwards, Mercury would spend anywhere from about 14 to 30 days in our second house, which is the house of physical possessions. It's the house of like what we own, our money, our income. And as soon as it goes there, suddenly we're not thinking that much anymore about like how we're presenting ourselves. We're on to like what we own. And this is where we start thinking about, it is really, I think like I've really been meaning to invest in, who knows, like a new computer. Like I understand that, this one that I have, like if I want to do my purpose, it's not going to last forever. And we start doing all this research about, different physical possessions, trying to find the right deal. Maybe we start to get serious about saving money. And then onward and onward. So as Mercury moves through our chart, we're intended to think and learn and grow in our understanding and engagement with that particular thing. So it is helpful to know where Mercury is at any given time. So Mercury will visit every house in your chart within a year's time. However, it will not move very, very slowly through that house every year, which is what a Mercury retrograde is. It's a significant slowdown of the planet Mercury relative to the Earth. So Mercury will go retrograde in a house only about every 5 or 6 years. So when I say to you that this is our opportunity to see where things have changed and weak points might have come about, it probably makes more sense if you think, okay, you are now going to be reviewing here for the first couple of days of this Mercury retrograde. Mercury will be retrograde in the sign of Gemini. And Mercury has not been at retrograde at that particular point in Gemini. So it's going to be happening on June 10th or 11th of 2022. The last time that Mercury was slowly moving through that area of your chart was June 17th of 2014. So as you can imagine, things have changed. Like things have changed since June or July of 2014. It is time actually to review. If you've been doing the same things over and over again in the area of your chart that relates to the sign of Gemini, then it may be time to make refinements now. So let's say, for example, that, well, I'm going to give you actually the real example that happened for me because like that'll be better. So Gemini for me, it rules my 10th house. And if you've been around the channel, I doubt this is the case for many, but if you've been around this Maya's Dream channel for a long time, you'll know that it was initially a lot different than it is right now. And the topics I discussed were like very different. So that's okay. That was appropriate for the time. But eventually I decided that I wanted to take the channel like in a different direction. And I started teaching about astrology and just spirituality, like more generally. When Mercury reached the point at which it would return after the retrograde, which is what we call the shadow period, my Mercury challenge was presented to me. So Mercury in my chart is, this Mercury retrograde is happening in Gemini. Gemini is my 10th house, which is basically the house of public life, okay, and your career. And what happened is some videos, which I no longer feel are of a lot of value to the public, and I had made private, they suddenly made themselves public again. And one of you was like so kind to actually like reach out to me and be like, Maya, there's these videos of you from a long time ago that are now public again, like on your channel. And I don't know if you want the public to see these. And I don't. And so for me, this Mercury retrograde period, the Gemini portion of it, I actually created this YouTube channel right around the last time that Mercury was retrograde in Gemini. That's when I sat down and I really made like the first chunk of videos. It was in 2014. And those were very different times. So this Mercury retrograde for me in part is about thinking about, what do I want my legacy to be? And how do I want to convey that to the public? And what am I going to do with these videos that are from another time and energy? If anybody wants to comment on what they think I should do, let me know. But for me, I'm not going to make the decision right now. I'm going to allow the full retrograde to play out. And then in mid-June, once it's over, I will make my decision. But Mercury retrograde has presented me with a challenge, and it's, who do you want to be in the public? What do you want your legacy to be? Are you going to take this former legacy like with you going forward? Or are you going to reinvent yourself? So for me, it's very like YouTube focused. So I may make a different video about this in general, but it's very focused for me on what is going to be my public presentation. If I'm going to do YouTube, what kind of YouTube is it going to be? What is the purpose? What are the topics? What is the format for the videos? Like all of this, like what is it that I want to leave now as a legacy? But it was all kind of brought up by this problem of, oh my gosh, YouTube suddenly changed the way that they categorize private videos, and all these private videos are suddenly now public again. This is not what I want to put forward. What am I going to do? And it's, a lot of the videos have a lot of like useful information, and I worked like really, really hard on the videos. But I don't necessarily want to teach about those topics anymore. So it's a bit of a conundrum. So that's my Mercury retrograde now. We're almost done. But yeah, so I want to provide 2 examples from the last 2 Mercury retrogrades of real things that happened to me and the lessons and how this has like changed my life. So there was a Mercury retrograde, which happened in Libra at the end of 2021. And that is my second house, which is the money house and the physical possessions house. And I guess I shouldn't go. I was going to give you more information about like Venus and things like that, but that's probably too complex. For those of you who understand, you can find out more about a house by knowing the planetary ruler of the house and then looking to where that falls in your chart. So like for me, the planetary ruler is Venus. Venus is conjunct my sun, which represents yourself. So anyway, so during that Mercury retrograde, I started to feel like I wanted to do all of this like shopping, which is not something that really is a part of my life that often. But in particular, I don't know if I saw an ad or what happened, but I started to feel like I needed to have pants. Like I started to feel like I need more pants. Like now, mind you, I almost always wear dresses and skirts and stuff like whenever I go out. So, but I don't know. Like I was like, oh, there's all these new pants. There's these new styles of jeans, and there's all like those paper bag waist pants, and like all of this stuff. And I became like transfixed. And I probably spent like an entire week reviewing online like all of the different pants and trying to find out, like I actually like watched videos from like fashion YouTubers, like what are the investments like of jeans, and like where, if you want them to last forever. Like I became like determined to find like my pants that I was going to fall in love with and keep for like 10 years. Very strange, but this is the truth about one of the things that happened. And so finally, now I've had a lot of issues finding pants like my entire life. Keep this in mind. Like I had a lot of issues. Like I am very petite, and it's really a challenge. Anybody who's like really petite will know, especially to find like adult sizes that are appropriate. So anyway, so I eventually spent a lot of money and I bought the highest quality pants, a variety of different pants during the Mercury retrogrades. And I got the pants and I felt like a little unsure about the pants, like right away, like the way that they fit, even though I did all the research and all of this stuff. Well, basically, like when the Mercury retrograde ended, I realized that even though I had done all this research and stuff, the pants that I purchased were definitely not going to be like my forever pants. Like, as a matter of fact, like I didn't like them at all. And I learned a couple of things. What actually happened like on that day that Mercury went direct is I actually like went in my closet and I pulled out like this bin that I had forgotten that I had, like a clothing kind of organizer thing. And I looked in it, and at the bottom of it were my favorite jeans and my favorite pants. And I compared them to the ones that I had purchased that were like the very best, nicest. And I realized that I loved them much, much more. And the lesson that I learned, like, is many things, but one thing that I learned is before buying something new to try to satisfy a need or desire, first assess like what you already have and ask yourself what is the reason that you're making a purchase. You know, are you making the purchase to try to evoke a certain feeling? Are you making a purchase because you need the item? And so my entire financial landscape has completely changed since that Mercury retrograde. I have saved thousands of dollars. Like, my spending is like way down. And it's because, first of all, I decided that personally for me, like, not to buy anything non-essential during Mercury retrograde periods because my mind will likely change, like, once Mercury is direct. But I also learned to truly assess what I have before making a new purchase. And in regards to pants, I realized I already love the ones that I have. And ever since then, whenever I need new ones, I just buy the exact same that I already have. And like, for me, that saves a lot of time and energy. Okay, so the last Mercury retrograde happened in the sign of Aquarius, which for me is my 6th house, which pertains to health, fitness, daily routine. And I have a mystical point called the Lot of Affliction in that house. And it is the most difficult point in my entire chart, far more than Mars or Saturn or the more popular malefics. Okay, anyway, so I have a personal affliction like related to that house, and Mercury was stationed on that point during the Mercury retrograde. So anything that we basically like eat or put in our body for health reasons is all ruled by the 6th house. I've been having some struggles, okay, to say the very least, like as it pertains to that particular house, including like many, including some kind of very, very serious allergic condition, okay? But that is a mystery. So I'd been having frequent allergic symptoms that are very serious and systemic. IgE-mediated allergies of unknown origin, some of them known, but many unknown. So during that Mercury retrograde, I started to think a lot about my nutrition, as one would during a Mercury retrograde in their 6th house. And I actually started to think about it in detail. And what happened is I started putting all my food and supplements into the app Chronometer. Highly recommend. Very, very, a very wonderful way to understand what your intakes are and identify nutritional gaps, which is what I was trying to do. I actually found out that even though my diet was really limited due to many known food allergies, that it was actually sufficient in everything except selenium. So I did what one would do, and I went out and I purchased a selenium supplement from a company that I use all the time for probably more than like half of my supplements. And I was very happy because I thought, oh, yes, I've cracked the code and I'm giving my body everything it needs. And I just felt really happy about that. And so I happily, with great joy, I took the selenium supplement the next day with dinner. And I had an anaphylactic event. That's the truth. Like, it's kind of scary, like, to even think back about it again. after recovering, I reached out to the company to get a list of their ingredients. And I found out, we had to do a little bit of searching around and looking at, all of the ingredients, but I discovered that I was experiencing severe allergic reactions to a common ingredient called mycocrystalline cellulose, which is in most vitamins and mineral supplements, or many. It's in many. And so that was a very, very difficult event. It was a huge problem presented to me by Mercury during that Mercury retrograde. However, I was able to identify, even though it was a little bit sad, I was able to identify that I was actually allergic to most of my supplements. And what happened was when Mercury went direct, I actually gave away like all of the supplements that had that ingredient to a friend and things like that. And my health like significantly took a step up because now I wasn't having like all of those exposures. And I think it's because of the slowdown with Mercury. And that whole process and becoming really aware, because normally I might have just, I don't know what I would have done, but there was something very intentional about the Mercury retrograde being in the 6th house and then slowly inputting all my food and identifying the gap and then consciously choosing the supplement and then waiting for it to come and then taking it and then noting like, what was happening, because I actually started journaling like my health symptoms during that time. That's probably pretty significant. I would recommend like wherever Mercury is retrograde in your chart, like to take notes on that area of your life about what comes up during the retrograde if you want to make the most of it. Because that's when I started journaling health symptoms. And I think I only was like a week into journaling it at that point. And so otherwise, like, because if you don't know, like part of severe allergic reaction is confusion. So if I had not been journaling, I may not have linked like the severe allergic reaction event to the actual supplement. Due to the extreme confusion that happens like during allergic events. So I think it was like the journaling itself, which allowed that to be. So it actually, this has also helped my like 2nd house as well, like my money area, because ever since then, when I'm shopping for different supplements, different vitamins, stuff like that, I actually know like if they have that ingredient, mycocrystalline cellulose, like I cannot purchase them. And I actually realized like I was purchasing, spending not a little bit, a lot, like spending thousands of dollars a year on certain supplements and things like that had this ingredient that was making me like chronically ill in part. And I just basically like I stopped buying those, and I'm saving a lot of money, and in certain ways my body is working better. And I found ways to get the nutrients and supplements into my body that create a happy, healthy body. And so it's interesting to think like I was having exposures to that ingredient every day. And so potentially without that Mercury retrograde and the review of that area of my life, I would have just continued to take all of those supplements probably forever. And I would experience the chronic inflammation and all of the chronic allergic symptoms as a result. So even though it was really scary, like what happened, it actually was very beneficial for me in the long term. So those are some real examples. And it is typically the case, particularly at a Mercury station, that you will be presented with some kind of problem or puzzle or something during the Mercury retrograde. And what I want people to know is that it really is in your highest good what transpires. If you approach it as a moment of learning and you really commit to integrating what you learn when Mercury reaches full speed and begins sailing forward, which will not really be that far from now. Like Mercury will be direct on June 3rd or June 4th, depending on where you live in the world. So whatever comes up here, like during the next 3 weeks or so, it can cause stress. However, it's a way of showing you where something may need to be updated or upgraded in your understanding to kind of give you what you actually need to succeed fully in the world during the next 5 or 6 years until that Mercury goes retrograde in that area of your chart again. And so even though it can be a little bit challenging, if you approach a Mercury retrograde with a sense of reverence, understanding that Mercury is a teacher and it's teaching you how to think and understand a particular area of your life now, then it really can give you a gift of amazing understanding. So anyway, this has been a lot longer than I intended it to be, but I hope you've enjoyed learning about what happens during the Mercury retrograde. I'm also going to have more videos coming up, one in particular about real, tangible, practical advice for the Mercury retrograde. And I may make another video about examples of particular things, because I took very, very detailed notes during the previous retrogrades, like of the many sorts of things that happened during the Mercury retrogrades. If you all have more questions about the planet Mercury or Mercury retrograde, like specific questions that would make a good video topic, please put them in the comments below. I really, really would love to talk more about Mercury and to provide all of you information which can help you to thrive in life. Yes, and to live in harmony with the planets. Like, that would make me really, really happy. So hopefully I'll get a chance to do that. And yes, I'd like to share like a little quote from my mother, which has informed this Mercury video today, because I'm actually recording on Mother's Day. And my mom is a Mercury person. She has a Virgo stellium. And one thing that she taught me is that if you go through something in life that's really hard, or if something went wrong, it's not a waste as long as you learn. That is something that she always would tell me. Like, if something went really, really bad, or I failed at something, she would just say, well, what did you learn? And I would tell her, and then she'd go, well, see, that was worth it then. Or like, yeah, like, you know, like, so that's why that happened, or like stuff like that. It was not so much like a particular stated lesson all the time, but it was more of like a way of life. And I am so grateful for her for instilling that within me, because it has given me so much peace, like when life has been difficult. And that's what I always remind myself of on the eve of a Mercury retrograde, as we are in at this time, is it's worth it if you learn. If you go through a very difficult time in life or stressful events and you don't take anything from it, that can be very, very unsettling, because it kind of just seems like maybe the universe is against you, or, you know, or something like that. But if you take the ultimate of learning and you richly take from life what it has to give you and to teach you, you will experience a deep and profound satisfaction. And so I encourage everyone to look at and acknowledge the problems that arise, because it's very rare to not be presented with a problem during a Mercury retrograde. But understand that it's like a puzzle, like a Rubik's Cube or something like that, that takes a lot of time to like sort out. But with your diligence and persistence and your acceptance that there is something that needs to be updated or remedied in order for your life to flow better in the future, and you work with that and you learn, and you also remember, like really integrate the lessons at the end of the retrograde, it really is a gift. And the stress that you might experience will not be a waste. So cheers to Mercury, my planetary ruler. I love Mercury, and the happiest days of my life are like the Mercury-Jupiter days, or like days where Mercury is sailing through the sky beautifully. So I love Mercury, and I love you guys. Thank you to anyone who listened until the end. And I love my mother, my Mercury mom. And I'm glad that I was raised to value information. And I hope that you all found value in today's video. Wishing you all the most amazing day and the most fruitful and benefic Mercury retrograde possible. So thanks again for listening. Many blessings and namaste.